morning, everybody. This is the Real World Prepper. Thanks for joining me today. And you know, many of you probably already know this because I've said it in other videos, but I call myself the Real World Prepper because I consider myself to be somebody who lives in the real world. And what I mean by that is, you know, I can't devote all of my time, money, energy. I'm not an endless pot of prepper life, you know. I would like to say that I live and breathe it. I do, but that's juxtaposed with real life, the real world. I go to a job every day, you know, or 5-6 days a week. You know, I've got bills to pay, mortgages, well, a mortgage, you know, all the trappings of regular life here in this country that most of you guys do. You know, I'm not well-to-do, but I do well, if that makes sense. And one thing that we try and do is make the most of our resources. Adaptability is a very important thing when you're trying to prep in the real world. When you've got, like I say, regular life, you've got your family, you got your bills, you've got medical issues, you've got you know, other things, outside things that are going on that you have to deal with, unexpected things that come up that you have to deal with, that we all do. You know, things happen. I'm standing here in front of my first chicken coop. I'm going to build another one. I know I started this thing last fall, put all this stuff in place, the fencing around here, and we brought this in, you know, and I would have liked to have had more done by now, but that's just not how it worked. I've had to adapt to some different circumstances that have taken place. So it's important to be able to adapt. Now let me give you a couple of examples. One thing that I used to do before I was a prepper, and when I was less responsible in many ways, but fiscally speaking is what I'm talking about here. If, say when it came tax time, if we got any money back, we'd try and do something fun with it. You know, I was always one to put off, years ago, I was always one to put off things that were necessary because they weren't fun, they weren't sexy, you know, they weren't cool, I didn't enjoy them, you know. Talked about getting my house painted and some wood replaced in the last couple of weeks. And, you know, back in the day, I would have let that stuff go longer, you know, not worry about it, because I wanted to do something else fun with that money. So some of the things that we do now, how we adapt is, well, like the paint job I mentioned before. We knew that it could use a new paint job, but it wasn't until you know, a buddy of mine who's a painter got out here and kind of did some real inspection, got up on the roof and everything, just kind of checking it out for me, that we discovered that we had some issues with some rot and potential leaks and things that needed to be tended to. So that's why we did it. We diverted some funds that we had saved. Really didn't have any plans for, but you know, just that we like to have some cash on hand, which I think is important. All of us should have some cash on hand, I think, if we can, and for emergencies, for all kinds of things, for these unseen things. So that came up, where that money was going to be put into some of the things, some of the infrastructure and things needed for me to continue and get this thing put together. I know it's only February, but it's starting to get warm here already. I think our winter is going to be pretty much over at this point. We would have liked to have already had chicks, you know, growing and being prepared to be put into the coop, but the coop's not even ready, you know. So I've had to adapt and overcome, you know, in different ways. And so now it's time to get started, or continue rather, on this chicken coop. We've still got a lot to do to prepare for our garden. I think our garden is going to be smaller to start this year than what I had hoped for, and that's been because of time, money, resources, and other things. But again, you adapt. So all the while, we're still putting up food, water, supplies, things you know, that if the balloon went up, you know, we're not just high and dry. But the chickens, the other animals we want to raise, the garden, everything else, as you guys, many of you know, these are some things we want to do to continue to be sustainable. But again, we have to adapt to the situation and the circumstances that come our way. So so that's what we're having to do. I did get offered a bunch of free lumber by a neighbor, which is cool. So that when I build another run, and I'm going to reconfigure this fencing and everything, I build another run, I can do it without spending any money on that wood. But I've got to get on that. You know, another thing for me personally, and some of you guys may deal with something like this, is as I've mentioned in other videos, I have a chronic disease, basically. It is called ankylosing spondylitis. It is essentially rheumatoid arthritis of the spine, the neck, and the shoulders. That's why many of you have noticed, I'm sure, that kind of stiff in the neck. It fuses vertebrae, you know, things like that. It causes a lot of pain during flare-ups and things. And that's another thing, is here in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, I've been flared up. It's been uncomfortable, and I'm not able to do as much as I'd like to do, you know, in a comfortable setting, you know, without it hurting and creating issue. So I don't know. I've just some thoughts on being able to adapt. You know, we want to set ourselves goals. We want to achieve these goals. We want to. Many of us want to be on a timeline with things. I know I do, and I used to have a problem with when those timelines wouldn't work. They didn't go as I had planned them, and I realized that, you know, life happens, the real world happens, and these plans have to change and adapt and be overcome. So I've gotten better at that, you know. And of course you have to. You really don't have a choice when you're faced with things changing, you know, and you have to adapt with them, and you know, work with what you're given, and work with what you've got, and work with the circumstances on hand, and things come up. You have to change your plans, you know. So, but never stop working towards your goals. And if you do get sidetracked and have to get off on another issue, another tangent, another whatever it may be that you have to do, just do it, you know. Work them in the order of importance, or imperative, you know, meaning, like in my case, for example, rather than wait on doing the stuff we just did to the house, you know, for the sake of, say, putting together this chicken coop, or, you know, getting the skid steer out here and pushing some dirt around to get this garden ready and everything, we went ahead and did that first, because, you know, my domicile is, well, I live there, you know, so don't live out here in the chicken coop, right? So you just have to learn to adapt. It's prepping 101, really. And so I guess that's really all I got. A little rambling about just some things that I've got going on, and where I am with my projects. Go ahead and show you real quick. I'm going to show you the pond. Now that's another thing. I've talked about my pond and about the plans I've got for it, and that's another thing that's really on the back burner, because it is holding water right now. Has been for a while. Of course, we've been getting unbelievable amounts of rain. But there it is. So I think she's looking pretty fair, and if that'll hold, and I don't know yet if it's going to. You know, we struggled last summer with trying to keep this thing working, but we'll see how it goes. But like I say, it's just, you know, adapting to what you've got to work with. So that's all I got. Real World Prepper. See you guys later.